Why we require this memory first of all? Memory is required for storage purpose. It stores both input data as well as processor data also. Especially here, the CPU can interact only with the primary memory, already I told you. And with that, the cost of primary memory is also more here. Compared to DRAM, the cost will be more, but faster wise, it is more here. This is regarding DRAM as well as SRAM. Welcome back to one and all. Myself, Vasanta, lecturer in Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysore. Today, we have to start with the fourth session of Input-Output Memory Device chapter. Whereas in the previous class, you have studied regarding output devices. Under that, you have studied what do you mean by printer, plotters as well as speakers. Whereas printer is an output device which helps to convert the soft copy to hard copy. When they come on types of printer, one is impact printer as well as non-impact printer. Then plotter is works like your printer only, but this mainly used to take the print in larger size. Whereas speaker is one of the output device. Whereas today we will come to know regarding computer memory. For which purpose we need memory? Under that, primary memory, then which are the types of primary memory, then difference between RAM and ROM. Regarding that, on today's class, you will come to know. Now, one by one we'll start. First, we'll start with computer memory. Why we require this memory first of all? Memory is required for storage purpose. It stores both input data as well as processor data also. That means it stores input data as well as information. Whatever thing the user we used to give the data, that also it will store. After processing, whatever results it generates, that also it will store. And when you want to come the types of memory, on that we have primary memory as well as secondary memory. And usually this can be calculated in the format of bytes format. The capacity of the system is identified by using how many bytes it contains, whether it's a kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes or petabyte. Regarding that, by that we are going to calculate the memory. Whereas memory is an essential component of any digital computer. It is very important. It is storing device. It stores programs. Whatever calculations, the programs, data which is required by the CPU and the result generated after processing, both it will store. That means it will store the programs, data as well as information. The storage capacity of a computer is measured in terms of bytes. Usually the capacity is always referred by how many bytes it contains. There are two main kinds of memory. The first one is primary memory and one more is secondary memory. When they come on the classification of memory, there are two types, primary memory as well as secondary memory. The primary memory can also be called as semiconductor memory and secondary memory can be called as magnetic memory. Now one by one we will discuss. The first, when they come on memory, two types, primary memory and one more is secondary memory. Then what exactly you mean by primary memory? Primary memory will store the recent data, recent applications, whereas secondary memory stores the data permanently for future purpose. Data usually permanently stored in the secondary memory. Whenever we will switch on the system, on that time what happens, it will take few times. That time can be called as booting time. On that time, the data, application, everything will transfer from secondary memory to primary memory, because CPU can interact only with the primary memory because it is very fast by nature. Whereas secondary memory, by nature, it is not so much of fast, whereas primary memory is very fast. That's why when you switch on the system, on that time, the data will transfer from secondary memory to primary memory. Whereas data permanently, for future purpose, permanently the data are stored in secondary memory. When they come on primary memory, once again it is classified into RAM as well as ROM. That is random access memory. That means the name itself suggesting random access memory. We can able to read as well as write on that. Random access memory. And one more is ROM, that is read only memory. The name itself suggesting read only. How many times we want, that many times we can able to read on that, but we are not able to write any data. When we come on secondary storage device, on that we have hard disk, CD, DVD, pen drive, floppy disk, all are example for secondary storage devices. When we come on memory, it is used for storage purpose. It is measured in terms of bytes. Primary memory, secondary memory. Primary memory is temporary by nature. Secondary memory is permanent by nature. But the storage capacity will be more in secondary memory. Storage capacity will be less in primary memory. But it is very fast. For the sake only, the cost of primary memory is more compared to secondary memory. And with that, the CPU can interact only with the primary memory, not with the secondary memory. Now, one by one we'll discuss. When we come on computer memory, consider we have units, symbols, and what exactly it is equals to. Then byte, where byte may be a bit, it's a collection of 8 bits. First bit we will write. Bit is the smallest individual unit which we are going to give to the computer, where it may be 0 or 1. 0 or 1 I used to call it as bit. The collection of 8 bits. The collection of 8 bits is called as 1 byte. The collection of 8 bits is called as 1 byte. The collection of the 1024 bytes equals 1 kilobytes. The collection of 1024 kilobytes equals 1 megabyte. The collection of 1024 megabytes equals 1 gigabytes. It means that if you observe this picture here, we have a byte. Byte, the symbol is B and it is equals to 8 bit. Already I told you. The collection of 8 bits is called as 1 byte. Then kilobyte is nothing but if you observe this, 1024 bytes equals 1 kilobytes. Then megabytes, 1024 kilobytes equals 1 megabytes. 1024 megabytes equals 1 gigabytes. 1024 gigabytes equals 1 terabyte. 1024 terabytes equals 1 petabyte. Now, so clear? Like this, the memory is classified. How exactly, how much memory we have. That by this we can able to identify. For example, consider you want to purchase one mobile. On that mobile shop, if they say the capacity of this mobile is 1 TB. And one more they will say the capacity of this mobile is 1024 megabytes. Then which one is more? That we have to identify. That is TB is more than MB. See, first bit, byte, kilobytes, megabytes, gigabyte, terabytes as well as then petabyte. Now is it clear? Like this, we will identify the memory of a computer as well as mobile, everything. By this way only, we will classify. Next, one by one we will discuss regarding primary memory. Already I told you when we come on primary memory, it stores recent data and applications. Recent one it will store, whereas secondary memory stores permanent data for future purpose. Then primary memory is a main memory of the computer. This is called the main memory. Why it is called as main memory? Because the CPU interact only with the main memory, that is with primary memory. It stores programs and data which are currently needed by the CPU. Whereas here it stores the data which is needed by the CPU, where it may be data or information or any program, everything is stored by on this primary memory. Recent one, whichever we recently want, that here it will store. Then size of the main memory is comparatively much smaller than that of secondary memory because of its high cost. Already I told you, secondary memory storage capacity is more, but primary memory capacity is less, because especially here the CPU can interact only with the primary memory. Already I told you, And with that, the cost of primary memory is also more here because the speed is more. Then the CPU communicates directly only with the main memory. That is, the CPU can interact only with the main memory, not with the secondary memory. Primary memory can be two types, RAM as well as ROM. Once again, if you come here, if you observe this diagram, primary memory, recent data, cost is more, speed is more, capacity wise it is less. Secondary memory, cost is less, storage capacity is more, but speed wise it is very less. Here, primary memory, RAM as well as ROM. Now, whereas when you come on primary memory, once again it is classifying into RAM as well as ROM. That is random access memory, whereas here read-only memory. In the exam, you may want to get the question, classify the types of primary memory or list the types of primary memory. Otherwise, expand RAM, ROM. Like that, you will going to get the question. Now, one by one, we will discuss, that is random access memory. What do you mean by this random access memory? This random access memory, in this, whatever data we want, that data we can able to write on that, as well as how many times I want, I can able to read also. How many times I want, I can write on that as well as read on that. That is random access memory is a main memory of a computer. It is a place where program gets stored. Temporarily, it stores the data, and here it is a volatile memory. What do you mean by this volatile memory? Because in the exam, you may going to get the question, what do you mean by volatile memory? Volatile memory is nothing but here the data will store as long as the power supply is there. Once the power goes off, the data will be erased here. Here the data will store. Consider you are typing some program on the system. You are not saved. Just you are typing from the morning till evening. You are typed some documents around 10 to 20 pages you are typed. You are not saved. Just you are typed all the programs. Immediately current goes off, only few seconds. Then later on, once again the power supply came back. Then when you switch on the system once again, the data will not there. Is it true? That means as long as the power supply is there, the data will be there in RAM. Once the power goes off, the data will be erased. That is nothing but volatile memory. In this, the data will be remains temporarily as long as the power supply is there. Once the power goes off, the data will be erased here. That is volatile memory. Volatile, the example is random access memory. Whereas for non-volatile means here, if the power supply is there, if the power supply goes off, whatever may be, the data will remain permanently. The data will never deleted there. It remains as it is. That is non-volatile memory. Whereas RAM is volatile memory. If the CPU needs to store the result of the calculation, it can be stored in the RAM. When we switch off the computer, whatever is stored in the RAM gets erased. It means that it is a volatile memory. As long as the power supply is there, the data remains. Once the power goes off, the data will be erased. That is the main drawback in this RAM. Now it's clear. Next, when we come on types of RAM, DRAM, SRAM, SDRAM, DDR, SDRAM, EDORAM. When we come on DRAM, on that it consists of transistors and capacitors. Dynamic, static, synchronous, double data rate synchronous dynamic random access memory, EDORAM. Then dynamic random access memory. Already I told you it consists of transistor as well as capacitor. It is made up from transistor as well as capacitor. It must be refreshed continuously. Always we have to refresh that. After doing every task, we have to refresh that. Then only we can be able to store the data. Then the cost wise, it is very less as well as it is very slow also. Cost wise it is less as well as it is very slow also. That is dynamic random access memory. But the main thing is here it consists of or it made up from transistor as well as capacitor. And the next one, SRAM, that is static dynamic random access memory, static random access memory, whereas it consists of multiple transistors. This is dynamic, this is static. Whereas here it consists of multiple transistors, whereas DRAM consists of transistor as well as capacitors only. Whereas here it consists only multiple transistors, and it is no need to be refreshed every time. Here no need to refresh that always, whereas in the first case we have to refresh each and every time. After each and every task we have to refresh, whereas when they come on SRAM, no need to refresh always, and it is very fast. Compared to DRAM, the cost will be more, but faster wise it is more here. This is regarding DRAM as well as SRAM. Then the next one is SDRAM, that is synchronous dynamic random access memory, whereas it synchronizes to the system clock and it increases the efficiency by reducing CPU waiting time. What do you mean by this CPU waiting time? Mainly, it synchronizes the waiting time, I told you. Then what do you mean by this waiting time? Consider you have one CPU here, two jobs are waiting here to process on the CPU. On that time, before entering to the CPU, the job has to wait it until the completion of the already whatever which were programmed in the CPU. That is nothing but waiting time. Whereas synchronous dynamic random access memory, here it mainly synchronizes the waiting time. By that, obviously, all the program will be executed very fastly. And the next one, DDR-SDRAM, that is double data rate synchronous dynamic random access memory. Double data rate, the name itself suggesting it is double. The rate of transaction will be double when compared to SDRAM, that is synchronous dynamic random access memory. It is very fast compared to SDRAM, that is the data transfer rate is double compared to SDRAM. It mainly reduces the waiting time. Obviously, processing is very fast here regarding that on DDR-SDRAM. And the last one, EDORAM, whereas EDORAM stands for Extended Data Output RAM. Extended Data Output RAM. It improves the time to read from the memory on the faster microprocessor such as Intel Pentium. These are the few types of RAM. First one, SRAM, DRAM, SDRAM, DDR-SDRAM, EDORAM, whereas DRAM consists transistor and capacitor, SRAM consists only transistor, SDRAM is used to increase the processing speed by reducing the waiting time, whereas double data rate, it is faster compared to SDRAM, and the last one is EDORAM. These are the 5 types of RAM, whereas RAM stores the data temporarily and it is a volatile memory. As long as the power supply is there, the data remains. Once the power goes off, the data will be erased. But here the main advantage is we can able to read as well as write on that. How many times you want, we can able to read, as well as how many times I want, I can write on that. That is regarding RAM. And the next one is ROM, that is read-only memory. The name itself suggesting read-only. It means that here whatever contents which is already written on that contents can be read, but we cannot able to write on that. And by nature it is permanent and it is non-volatile also. Non-volatile means here if the power supply is there or not, whatever may be, the data remains constant. Permanently the data will be stored. And the data, how many times you want, you can able to read that. But you cannot able to write on that. That is, ROM stands for read-only memory. The information is pre-recorded into the ROM chip at manufacturing time only. At the time of creation only, the data are written on that. Once it is written, that cannot be erased, but whatever data it is contains, that data can be read how many times we want. It is a pre-recorded. In the beginning itself, all the data is recorded on that chip, and the data can be read how many times we want. Once data has been written into a ROM chip, it cannot be erased, but you can read it. It cannot be erased, it cannot be deleted, but only thing you can able to read on that. When we switch off the computer, the contents of ROM are not erased here. If you switch off the system, then also the data remains permanently, but remains stored permanently here. Main thing is, if you switch off that system, then also the contents in the ROM will remain permanently. And ROM is non-volatile memory. Non-volatile means here, if the power supply is there or not, the data remains constant on that chip. And when you come on types of ROM, PROM, EPROM, EEPROM. PROM, programmable read-only memory. It means that the data can be written only at the time of programming time. In the beginning, they can able to write the data. Afterwards, we cannot able to write any data on that. That is PROM, programmable. In the programming stage only, we will write on that, and that data can be read how many times we want. And the next one, EPROM, that is erasable. The name itself suggesting erasable. It means that the contents can be erased. Erasable, programmable, read-only memory. Whatever contents in the chip, the data can be erased, and later on the same place we can able to write, and later on we can able to read on that. And the last one is EEPROM, that is electrically erasable, programmable, read-only memory. Electrically erasable. It means that by using electrical signal, we can able to erase the data, and we can able to rewrite on that, and whatever data we are rewrite, that can be read how many times we want. There are three types: PROM, EPROM, EEPROM. Programmable only at the beginning, erasable, the data can be erased and then we can able to rewrite on that. Whereas EEP, that is by using electrical signal, we can able to erase the data, and with that, by the same place, on the same place, we can able to write the data how many times we want. And the next one is, the main, in the exam you will going to get the write the difference between RAM and ROM. Usually it's very important question. In the exam, you may go to get the question, write the difference between RAM and ROM. Already I told you, RAM stands for random access memory, ROM stands for read-only memory. Whereas here RAM stands for random access memory, ROM stands for read-only memory. Whereas RAM allows the computer to read data quickly to run application, and it allows reading and writing also. It helps to perform both read operation as well as write operation. Whereas ROM stores program required to initially boot the computer, and it can allowed only to reading purpose. Only we can able to perform read operation, but we are not able to perform write operation. ROM is a volatile memory. That means as long as the power supply is there, the data remains. Once the power goes off, the data will be erased. But when you come on ROM, it is a non-volatile memory. It means that the contents remains permanently even when there is no power supply. And the next difference is, the main types of RAM are SRAM, static RAM as well as dynamic RAM. Whereas here PROM, EPROM, EEPROM. Now is it clear? Then once again I am to recall whatever thing today we have done. The first one, when you come on here, first memory is required for storing purpose. When you come on types, primary memory, secondary memory. Primary memory means it stores recent data, recent application. Secondary memory data stores permanently for future purpose. When you switch on the system, at the time of booting time, the data will transfer from secondary memory to primary memory for processing purpose, because CPU can interact only with the primary memory. By this way, we will measure the capacity or storage capacity of the memory. And when they come on primary memory, main memory, and it stores recent data and recent application, it is smaller compared to secondary memory. It can directly interact with the CPU. When they come on classification, RAM and ROM, whereas RAM, random access memory, we can able to read as well as write. Then it stores the data temporarily. It is a it is a volatile memory, and it stores result of a calculation. It can be stored then in RAM, and it mainly erases the data when there is no power supply. Types: DRAM, SRAM, SDRAM, DDR, SDRAM, EDORAM. Dynamic random access memory, static random access memory, synchronous dynamic random access memory, double data rate synchronous dynamic random access memory, as well as the last one is EDORAM. Here in the exam, you will get the questions: expand SRAM, DRAM, SDRAM, DDR-RAM, EDORAM, like that. You may want to get the question. Expansion also is very important. And when you come on ROM, read only memory. Here it is a non-volatile memory, and here permanently it stores the data. When you come on types, PROM, programmable read-only memory, EPROM, that is erasable programmable read-only memory. The last one is electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. And this is a difference, major difference between RAM and ROM. Next class, you will come to know regarding which are the secondary storage devices, how data will stored for future purpose, which are the different types of secondary storages you have, especially like hard disk, floppy disk, pen drive, CD, DVD. Regarding that, you will come to know in the next class. Thank you for all of you.